Becca Hayes never planned to make the Colorado Rockies her home. But now, with the snow piled high outside her cabin and the dawn biting at her face, she can't imagine leaving. The mountain air tastes clean, sharp as broken glass, and when she runs at sunrise, it's like she's chasing something, her past, her pain, or maybe just the memory of her mother's laughter echoing across these hills. At 31, Becca has legs shaped by marathons and eyes shaped by sorrow. She lives alone now, by choice. Her only companions the rescue dogs who curl at her feet each night, and the wild deer she sometimes glimpses through the pines. The day begins gray, heavy with promise and warning. Becca laces up her battered sneakers, shrugs into her old green jacket, and pushes out into the cold. The snow crunches underfoot, crisp and deep, burying the world in silence. Every breath draws a cloud in front of her face. The woods are quiet, except for the distant call of a raven overhead and the occasional snap of a branch beneath a rabbit's foot. She runs because she must, because motion is the only thing that keeps the ghosts away. A mile from the cabin, Becca rounds a thicket of firs and stops, heart hammering. There, somewhere ahead, the silence is shattered by a sound that doesn't belong. Not the yip of a coyote, not the howl of wind, but a cry, piercing and raw. She freezes. The sound comes again, a desperate, high-pitched whinny that slices through the cold. What? A horse out here? No, not possible. Not this deep in the snow, not in winter. Still, the call comes again, ragged, pleading. Becca's instincts snap to life. She veers off the trail, pushing through drifts that reach her knees, ignoring the way the snow seeps into her shoes and numbs her toes. Her breath rasps in her ears. Another cry. Closer now. The trees thin, and suddenly she bursts into a small clearing dusted with blood on the white ground. At the center lies a Mustang, silver gray, a ghost against the snow, legs folded awkwardly beneath him. His sides heave, each breath shaky. Blood stains his shoulder and neck, bright against his thick winter coat. Becca stares, then darts forward, dropping to her knees beside him. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here. I'm not going to hurt you." The Mustang's eyes are wild, rolling, foam flecking his lips. Deep claw marks score his flesh, fresh and ugly, already beginning to freeze at the edges. Mountain lion. The realization settles like a stone in Becca's gut. The horse must have fought, barely escaped. She glances around, heart pounding, scanning the tree line. No sign of the predator, but she feels its shadow, somewhere just beyond the edge of sight. Okay, Becca, think. What now? She strips off her jacket, wrapping it around the Mustang's neck to staunch the bleeding. Her fingers fumble with numbness as she presses hard, whispering nonsense to calm him. "I've got you, just breathe. Don't leave me here, come on, buddy." The wind cuts deeper, howling now. Becca glances down. Her hands are shaking. The horse's breathing is shallow, flecks of ice clinging to his nostrils. They can't stay here. If the lion comes back, or if the cold finishes what the claws started, he won't last an hour. Neither will she. She looks at the path behind her, already vanishing beneath fresh snow, and a bitter memory stabs through her. Her mother's voice, years ago, urging her through a blizzard after a fall, blood trickling from her own forehead. "Don't stop, Becca. Don't you dare stop." She rips off her scarf, binding it tight around the horse's wounds. Her mind races. She'll never be able to carry him. Not with his size, but maybe... Her gaze snaps to a downed aspen nearby. With frantic urgency, she snaps branches, yanking off her belt to lash them together into a crude sled. Her breath comes in ragged bursts as she hauls the makeshift contraption into place behind the horse. "Come on, you beautiful thing. Help me out here." She slides her hands under his chest, muscles screaming, and drags him inch by inch onto the sled. The Mustang groans, but somehow he shifts, collapsing against her. The world narrows to breath and pain and cold. She ties her old dog leash around the sled's front and then digs in her heels, heaving with all the strength her marathon training ever gave her. The trek back is hell. The woods seem to press in, the wind biting, the snow blinding. Every few yards, Becca glances over her shoulder, certain she'll see a tawny shape slipping through the shadows, golden eyes watching. Her thoughts splinter. What if the lion circles behind us? What if I can't drag him fast enough? What if we both freeze out here? Once her foot catches a root beneath the snow. She stumbles, goes down hard, the Mustang sliding sideways, whinnying in pain. For a moment, she just lies there, face in the snow, gasping. I can't do this. No, get up, Becca, get up now. She forces herself to her knees, blinking away tears of exhaustion, and staggers to her feet. Her breath steams. The horse shudders, but his eyes are on her now, trusting her, somehow, to finish this fight. The world shrinks to white and red and the creak of wood. She drags the sled past fallen logs, past half-buried stones, always listening for the mountain lion's silent footfalls. Each step is agony. The cold numbs her fingers until she can't feel them. The cabin, her safe place, has never seemed so far away. At last, as her muscles tremble and the sky lightens behind a veil of cloud, Becca sees the rough line of her fence through the trees. Relief crashes through her, wild and sharp. She hauls the sled the final yards, shoulders burning, legs ready to buckle. Behind them, something moves. A shape in the snow, silent, watching. Not now, not now. With a final, desperate heave, Becca yanks the sled through the cabin gate and slams it shut behind her. She stumbles inside, dragging the Mustang into the warmth, collapsing against the door as the world fades to gray. Only the sound of the Mustang's shaky breathing and her own heart pounding in the quiet tells her they're both still alive. The cabin is no fortress, just pine logs, stubborn stone, and a roof groaning under the snow's weight. But inside, for a moment, Becca and the wounded Mustang are safe from the teeth of winter and the eyes that stalk the trees. She staggers to her feet, dragging the Mustang, his flanks trembling, his nostrils flaring with each rattling breath, closer to the fireplace. Her hands fumble with the old matches, striking again and again until finally, a flame leaps up and devours the dry kindling. The room flickers to life. Shadows dance across the walls, and the cold, just for a moment, backs away. Becca's chest heaves. She peels off her soaked clothes, tossing them in a heap near the wood stove, and wraps herself in an old blanket. Her body aches with the chill and effort, but adrenaline crackles through her veins, keeping her upright. She moves to the Mustang, silver gray and dusted with blood, his wild eyes never leaving hers. For a heartbeat, they just stare at each other. Two survivors, both trembling, both afraid. Easy, boy. You're safe now, I promise. But safety in the Rockies is always temporary. The wind moans outside, rattling the cabin's windows. Somewhere out in the blackness, a shape moves. A shadow among shadows. The mountain lion. She can feel it, its hunger, its patience. She shuts her eyes, wills her hands to stop shaking, and gets to work. She grabs her battered first aid kit, alcohol, gauze, old towels. She cleans the Mustang's wounds, biting her lip each time he flinches. Blood spatters the floor. He lets out a low, desperate sound when she probes the deepest cut. Becca murmurs softly, her voice steady even as her heart thunders in her chest. "You gotta hold on, all right? I know it hurts." The Mustang's head droops, sweat beading on his neck despite the cold. She wraps the wounds as best she can, tucking blankets around him, then hurries to the window. The night is absolute, snow still falling, thick, endless, erasing all tracks. She can't see the lion, but she knows it's there. She locks every door, bolts every shutter, and grabs her flare gun from the mantel. She sets water to boil on the stove, then paces, her mind racing. Should she call for help? Her satellite phone lies dead in a drawer, the last charge used days ago. Her truck's buried beneath 3 feet of snow, battery frozen solid. No help is coming, not tonight. Maybe not for days. It's just her, the Mustang, and whatever waits outside. The Mustang shifts, groaning. Becca sits by his side, stroking his sweat-damp mane, and hums a lullaby she barely remembers, something her mother sang to her on the worst nights, when storms battered the roof and the world seemed impossibly cold. Her breath softens. The Mustang's eyes close. She checks the windows one more time, then curls up beside him on the floor, the flare gun cradled in her hand. She dozes, jolting awake every time a branch creaks or the wind howls. Once, she swears she hears the scrape of claws on wood, but when she peers out, there's only snow. In the blue hours before dawn, she wakes with a start. The Mustang is breathing, but shallow, his sides twitching. She crawls to the kitchen, digs out an old box of apples and slices one, coaxing him to nibble from her palm. He eats, slow and cautious, never taking his eyes off the window. Outside, the world is gray and restless. Becca slips on her boots and coat, grabs a handful of rocks, and steps onto the porch. The silence is total, until she whistles, loud and sharp, shattering the morning calm. For a second, nothing. Then, from the tree line, a flash of movement, a tawny shape low to the ground, muscles bunching. Her heart jumps. The mountain lion's eyes gleam, fixed on the cabin. Becca grabs a rock, hurls it with everything she has. The stone vanishes into the woods, and the big cat slinks back, circling, tail twitching. Becca fires her flare gun into the air. The crimson streak lights up the snow, sizzling as it lands. The lion hesitates, then melts into the shadows. Not gone, just waiting. She retreats inside, hands shaking, and braces a chair under the door handle. The Mustang trembles, his breath fogging the air. She kneels beside him, pressing her forehead to his. "We're not out of this yet, but I'm not leaving you." Hours pass, the cold pressing in as the day drags on. Becca alternates between tending the Mustang and standing guard at the window, scanning for any sign of the lion. She thinks of her mother again, remembers the story she always told. A winter years ago when Becca got lost in a whiteout, and her mother found her by following the sound of her cries, bundled her in a coat, and carried her home through a blizzard. You never leave someone behind, Becca. Never. The memory steals her. She pushes back her exhaustion, boiling snow for drinking water, tearing more blankets into strips for bandages. The Mustang's breathing steadies, though his wounds bleed through the cloth. Outside, the storm eases for a moment, moonlight spilling across the snow. A howl splits the night, not the mountain lion, but a wolf somewhere far off. Becca tenses. The Rockies are never truly quiet. Danger comes in packs, in shadows, in the turning of the wind. The Mustang whinnies, struggling to rise. Becca soothes him, holds him down gently. No, don't try to get up yet. You're not ready. He calms under her touch, shivering but alive. Becca sighs, exhaustion threatening to swallow her, but she won't abandon him. Not now, not ever. She knows what it means to be alone in the cold, to wait for help that never comes. The hours bleed together. Outside, the mountain lion prowls, sometimes visible as a phantom shape pacing the tree line, sometimes just a pair of golden eyes reflecting in the darkness. Each time it draws near, Becca lights another flare, hurls another rock, shouts until her voice cracks. The big cat never attacks, but it never truly leaves. By the time dawn breaks again, Becca is barely standing, but the Mustang is still breathing, his eyes brighter, the bleeding slowed. She glances out the window, sees the mountain lion perched on the ridge, tail flicking. The battle isn't over, not by a long shot. She closes the door, checks the locks, and drops beside the Mustang. The fight for survival has only just begun, but Becca Hayes is nothing if not stubborn. And as the wind howls outside and the snow falls fresh, she knows she'll do whatever it takes, even if it means facing the lion alone. For days, the world shrinks to a cabin, a fire, and the thin, trembling boundary between life and death. The blizzard thickens outside, sealing Becca and the wounded Mustang into their own little universe of snow and silence. Every window is frosted white, the howling wind a constant, hungry whisper at the door. The world outside might as well be another planet. No hope of help, no hint of rescue, just Becca, the Mustang, and the rhythmic crackle of burning wood. Each morning, Becca wakes stiff and cold on the floor, always reaching first to check the Mustang's breathing. Sometimes it's shallow and fast, the sound of a body fighting hard to survive. Sometimes it's steadier, his flanks rising and falling, eyes half open as he watches her from under his shaggy forelock. She talks to him constantly, her words filling the silence, her voice growing softer, more vulnerable as the days pass. You know, I never wanted to be out here, she murmurs, tearing another strip from an old towel to press against his wounds. This place, it's beautiful, sure, but it's lonely too. I guess we both know what that feels like. She works in careful silence, boiling snow for water, heating it on the wood stove, then coaxing the Mustang to drink, just a mouthful at a time. When he refuses, she worries, her hands shaking as she tries to soothe him. Come on, you're not giving up on me, right? Not after all we've been through. Some nights, the wind rattles the cabin so hard she half expects the roof to give in. During those hours, she wraps herself and the Mustang in every blanket she owns, their shared warmth the only defense against the creeping cold. She hums, sometimes singing fragments of old songs, other times just talking, telling him about her life, a life that seems so far away now. I used to run marathons, 26 miles of pain, sweat, and stubbornness. People thought I was tough. I guess I was, but nothing prepared me for losing my mom. When she died, it felt like someone tore the heart out of the world. Her voice trails off, tears prickling her eyes. The Mustang watches, his ears flicking, nostrils flaring, as if he senses the storm inside her as much as the one outside. In the silence that follows, Becca feels her grief rise and ebb, like the wind itself, never really gone, only resting. The days blend together, measured only by the slow healing of the Mustang's wounds and the dwindling woodpile by the fire. She names him Ghost, not just for his pale silver coat, but for the way he seemed to appear out of nowhere. Half spirit, half survivor. At first, Ghost recoils whenever she touches him, flinching at her hands, his eyes wide and mistrustful. But slowly, day by day, the distance between them shrinks. He eats apple slices from her palm, lets her comb the knots from his mane, and even rests his great head beside her when the exhaustion becomes too much. One night, as the blizzard rages, Becca wakes to find Ghost trembling, his legs churning as if running in a dream. She lays a hand on his neck, murmuring nonsense until he settles. In that moment, she feels a connection stronger than words, a shared understanding between two creatures battered by the world, stubborn enough to keep going. Food runs low. Becca counts the cans of beans in her pantry, considers rationing even further. She melts snow for water, hoping the next storm doesn't last much longer. She knows if Ghost's wounds get infected, or if his fever spikes, there's little more she can do. The nearest vet is over 20 miles away, across roads now buried and impassable. She feels that helplessness gnawing at her, but she refuses to let it win. On the third morning, she finds Ghost standing, shaky, legs splayed wide, but standing. She almost laughs, relief washing through her so sudden and fierce that she drops the cup she's holding. "Look at you. That's it, come on. You're tougher than you look." Ghost snorts, his breath steaming in the cold air. He steps toward her, one cautious hoof at a time, and bumps her shoulder with his nose. The gesture is gentle, almost shy, but Becca grins, a real smile breaking through for the first time in days. They fall into a routine. Becca tends Ghost's wounds, rewrapping bandages, checking for swelling. She talks to him about her mother, about the races she used to run, about the people in town who think she's crazy for living out here alone. Sometimes she just sits in silence, her hand resting on his shoulder, listening to the fire crackle. One evening, as snow taps against the window and Ghost dozes by the hearth, Becca lets herself speak the fears she's been holding inside. "I don't know what's coming next, Ghost. Maybe the storm will break tomorrow. Maybe it'll get worse. But I'm not leaving you. Not for anything. That's a promise." The blizzard shows no signs of letting up. The world outside is still buried, but inside the cabin something shifts. Becca feels the edges of her grief softening, worn down by the routine of care and the silent company of the Mustang. She remembers her mother's words. Kindness is the only thing that makes the cold bearable. Maybe, just maybe, saving Ghost is saving herself. That night, as the wind howls and the fire burns low, Becca and Ghost sleep side by side, two survivors sharing warmth, trust, and a flicker of hope that just maybe, when the storm passes, they'll both find the strength to face whatever comes next. The storm finally eases, though winter's grip refuses to loosen completely. For days, the world outside is a soft, blinding white, the drifts piled nearly to the bottom edge of Becca's windows. But inside the cabin, a gentle rhythm settles over Becca and Ghost. There's a new stillness in the air, not the silence of fear, but the quiet of two living things growing used to one another. Becca wakes each morning to Ghost's warm breath, the Mustang's soft wicker greeting her before she even sits up. She starts each day by checking his wounds, her hands careful, patient. The deep claw marks are scabbing over, the swelling down. She works steadily, cleaning the crusted blood, rewrapping with whatever scraps of cloth she can spare, melting snow to dab away the grime. Sometimes Ghost flinches, but he doesn't bolt or snap. He's learning to trust, one breath at a time. Food is still tight. Becca counts and recounts every can and bag in her cupboards. She slices her last 2 apples, offering Ghost the bigger half every time, watching him crunch each piece with surprising delicacy. She cooks oatmeal over the wood stove, sharing mouthfuls with him, smiling at the way he tries to nudge the empty bowl with his nose. If anyone from town saw this, her eating breakfast with a wild Mustang, they'd think she'd lost her mind completely. Maybe she has, but in this strange little pocket of the world, it feels right. Outside, tracks start to appear in the snow. At first, it's just the usual: a rabbit's hurried dash, the tiny stars left by a flock of sparrows. But soon, heavier prints circle the cabin. Becca crouches by the window, studying the tracks. Coyotes, deer, and, one morning, a wide, padded paw print pressed deep near the fence line. The mountain lion hasn't left. She keeps her flare gun loaded and ready, never letting Ghost out of her sight. As the days lengthen, Becca starts letting Ghost move around the cabin. He explores with cautious curiosity, his hooves clopping softly on the wooden floor, nostrils flaring as he sniffs every corner. Sometimes he pauses by the front door, ears flicking, staring at the blinding world outside. Becca wonders if he's thinking about the herd he left behind, or if he's starting to think of this strange place as home. One evening, after a day spent boiling snow and patching up a leaking window, Becca sits on the floor, back to the wall, staring at the fire. Ghost stands nearby, his coat glowing in the firelight, scars visible but fading, the quiet stretches between them, comfortable now. "You know, my mom would have loved you," Becca says softly, breaking the hush. "She was the one who taught me to care for animals, even the ones everyone else gave up on. She'd always say, 'You can't save the world, Becca, but you can save what's right in front of you.'" Ghost lowers his head, lips tickling her hair. She laughs, a small, genuine sound, the kind she hasn't heard from herself in a long time. As Ghost heals, Becca finds herself healing too. The grief that felt like a heavy stone in her chest begins to shift. She talks more, shares stories from her childhood, the races she won and lost, the friends who drifted away after her mother's funeral, the hollow loneliness that led her here. Ghost listens, ears flicking, eyes gentle. Sometimes she thinks he understands more than any person could. With the storm finally letting up, Becca opens the back door a crack, letting Ghost step out onto the porch under her watchful eye. He sniffs the air, breath steaming, then takes a few tentative steps into the blinding snow, hooves crunching, head held high. The cold stings her face, but she stands beside him, shoulder to shoulder, feeling stronger with each breath of icy air. That's when trouble arrives. The quiet is broken one afternoon by the rumble of an old pickup on the distant road. Becca stiffens, her stomach tightening. She recognizes that engine. It's her nearest neighbor, Hank Wilson, a man who's never made a secret of his hatred for wild horses. The truck stops at the end of her drive, tires spinning in the slush. Hank gets out, thick parka zipped tight, eyes narrowed. He stands at the fence, hands cupped to his mouth. "Hey, Hayes, you hiding something out here?" Becca steps outside, planting herself between Hank and the cabin. "Just keeping warm, Hank. Storm's been brutal." Hank eyes the tracks in the snow, his gaze sharp. "You know those Mustangs attract mountain lions, don't you? You start feeding them, you'll have a whole mess on your hands. Don't say I didn't warn you." He lingers, suspicion heavy in his stare. Becca's heart pounds, but she forces a calm smile. "I'll keep that in mind." Hank spits in the snow, then gets back in his truck, tires spinning as he leaves. Becca doesn't relax until the sound fades. She glances back at Ghost, who's pressed against the porch, eyes wide. "That's just Hank," she says quietly, though her hands are shaking. "He's all bark, no bite." But as she ushers Ghost back inside, she worries. If Hank suspects she's harboring a wild horse, he could report her. If the authorities come, Ghost might be taken away, maybe even put down. The thought gnaws at her. That night, as the wind howls and darkness presses in, Becca sits by the fire, her hand resting on Ghost's neck. "I'll figure something out," she whispers. "I won't let them take you." Ghost shifts, leaning into her touch. For the first time in weeks, Becca feels the beginnings of hope. Out here, in the wild heart of winter, two survivors are learning how to trust again, and neither is ready to give up that fragile peace, no matter what comes next. The sense of peace that had settled in Becca's cabin is fragile, like a thin sheet of ice waiting to shatter. Each morning, she wakes to the sound of the wind sifting through the pines and the subtle, constant ache in her gut. Something has changed in the air, a tension creeping in from the woods and settling in the shadows. The snow is still deep, but the days are growing longer, the light lingering as winter starts to turn its slow, grudging head toward spring. Becca keeps to her routine, but her senses are razor-sharp. She notices every broken branch, every faint track in the snow, every unusual bird call. Ghost's wounds are healing well, but he's still weak, and his coat is patchy where the fur hasn't quite grown back. The scars on his shoulder are dark and jagged, a reminder of how close they both came to death. Becca rubs them gently each night, promising him, promising herself, that she won't let anything else hurt him. But trouble is coming, and she can feel it. It starts with the neighbor, Hank Wilson. He's back twice in 3 days, circling her property in his pickup, slowing down to stare at the house. Once, Becca sees him through the kitchen window, standing just beyond the fence, peering at the footprints near the barn. She keeps Ghost hidden inside when Hank's around, but the Mustang is growing restless, pacing the floor, tossing his head at the scent of fresh air that slips in through the cracks. "You're a wild thing," Becca murmurs, scratching his cheek. "I know what it's like to feel trapped." One night, as Becca sits at the kitchen table sorting through bills and unopened mail, she hears a car engine sputtering up the road, a sound that doesn't belong. She flicks off the lights, peering through a slit in the curtain. 2 men get out, flashlights bobbing. She recognizes neither, but their posture is predatory, their movements careful. Poachers. She's heard rumors for years. Men who hunt wild horses for money, who'll take what they want and leave nothing but empty hoofprints and blood behind. Her heart stutters. She creeps to the door, clutching the flare gun in one hand and a heavy flashlight in the other. Ghost stands tense in the shadows, ears pinned, every muscle quivering. The men walk along the fence line, muttering. Their lights sweep over the snow, pausing on old hoofprints and tufts of silver hair caught on a nail. Becca's breath comes fast. She steps out onto the porch, making her presence known. "Evening," she calls, her voice steady. "Lost something?" The men look up, startled. One tips his hat, fake smile plastered on his face. "Just passing through, ma'am. Didn't mean to startle you." Becca doesn't blink. Her finger rests on the trigger of the flare gun. "You're on private land. I'd appreciate it if you kept moving." They mumble apologies and back away, but their eyes linger too long, and when they disappear into the woods, she knows they're not gone for good. As the sun rises, Becca inspects the property. She finds new footprints, human, not animal, along the tree line, and a piece of red cloth snagged on a bush. Someone's been watching, waiting for a chance. That afternoon, Hank storms up the drive, face red with anger. Hayes, I know what you're doing. You're bringing trouble to all of us, mountain lions, poachers, the whole damn circus. I ought to call the authorities right now. Becca stands her ground, arms crossed. I'm not doing anything illegal, Hank. There's nothing here for you to worry about. He spits in the snow, eyes narrowed. If that Mustang's still alive, you better pray he doesn't bring more lions or thieves to my door. Last warning, Becca. He leaves in a spray of gravel, but the threat hangs in the air like smoke. That night, unease keeps Becca awake. She double-checks every lock, barricades the door with a chair, and keeps the flare gun on the nightstand. Ghost paces nervously, spooked by every creak and gust. The cabin feels small and vulnerable, its walls too thin to hold back the darkness pressing in from the woods. Just after midnight, a noise jolts her upright. A scraping, then a heavy thud against the back wall. Ghost whinnies, rearing in panic. Becca grabs the flare gun and races to the window. In the moonlight, she sees it. The mountain lion, massive and hungry, slinking through the shadows. Its golden eyes gleam, locked on the cabin. A crash. Something slams into the barn. Becca's blood runs cold. She fires a flare out the window, the red light hissing across the snow, startling the big cat. For a moment it hesitates, then lunges at the door. Ghost screams, hooves battering the floorboards. Becca grabs a broom, swinging at the window, yelling as loud as she can. Get away! Get! The lion retreats, but not before raking a paw along the porch, splintering wood. Ghost stumbles, sides heaving, fresh blood staining his bandages. Becca drops to her knees, clutching his neck, whispering fiercely. It's okay. I've got you. I'm here. But the reality hits her hard. Her home is no longer safe. The predators, animal and human, are closing in, and staying put will mean certain death for both of them. She sits awake till dawn, heart pounding, watching the woods for any sign of movement. As the first light spills over the snow, she makes her decision. We're leaving, Ghost, she says quietly. I can't protect you here anymore. She starts packing immediately, shoving what little food she has left into a backpack, rolling up blankets, searching for every bit of warm clothing. She wraps Ghost's wounds again, fashioning makeshift boots for his hooves out of old towels and duct tape. The road ahead is brutal, miles of mountain, snow, and danger. But Becca knows the only chance for Ghost is to get him to the sanctuary on the far side of the Rockies, where he might finally be safe. She looks at Ghost, her voice trembling but determined. We're in this together. I won't let you down. And with one last glance at the battered, beloved cabin, Becca opens the door to the unknown, leading Ghost into the biting wind, away from everything they've ever known, toward one final fight for survival and freedom. Before dawn, Becca stands in the frozen doorway, her breath coiling in the half-light. Her backpack is heavy, packed tight with bandages, flares, apples, oats, and everything she could salvage from her meager pantry. She's layered every shirt and sweater she owns, but the wind slices through her all the same. At her side, Ghost shifts uneasily, the makeshift boots on his hooves rustling against the packed snow. His wounds are bound, though fresh blood already dots the wrappings, a sobering reminder that his strength is borrowed and finite. Becca hesitates only a second. There's no going back. Come on, she murmurs, touching his neck. We can do this. One step at a time. They set out, leaving the battered cabin and all its memories behind. Becca glances over her shoulder once, just once, to see the plume of smoke from her chimney curling through the morning sky, the windows now dark, the world she knew receding behind each labored step. Ahead lies the mountain pass, an unforgiving ribbon of white winding into the unknown. At first, the going is slow. The snow is deep, the drifts taller than Ghost's knees in places, and Becca has to stomp a trail ahead, gasping for breath, her thighs burning. Ghost stumbles often, flanks trembling, but he doesn't refuse her. When she falters, he nudges her gently with his nose, as if reminding her that they're not alone in this. The cold is relentless. By midday, a bitter wind picks up, lashing their faces and scouring every bit of exposed skin. Becca's lips crack. Her fingers throb inside her gloves. She can't stop, not for more than a few minutes at a time. If they rest too long, the chill will seep in and they might never move again. Halfway through the first day, a distant howl echoes from the trees behind them. Then another, closer. Becca's heart skips. Wolves. She glances at Ghost, whose ears flick back, eyes wide. She shoves her fear down, digging a flare from her pack. As the howls fade, she picks up her pace, scanning the ridgelines, refusing to let her mind dwell on what shadows may be following. The first night falls with little warning, a slate-colored dusk that sinks into black before Becca has found true shelter. She spots an old, abandoned hunting shack leaning against a copse of spruce, its roof sagging but its walls mostly intact. She leads Ghost inside, clearing a space amid broken crates and splintered beams. She rubs his legs down with snow, massages his shoulders, and feeds him the last of the apples. For herself, just a handful of cold oats and water. The wind howls. Outside, something brushes against the walls. A fox, maybe, or worse. Becca sleeps fitfully, waking at every sound, clutching the flare gun and praying for dawn. Day 2 is harder. Ghost limps, his wounds bleeding anew. The snow deepens as they climb higher into the pass, each step a fight. Becca's legs ache, her head throbs with hunger and exhaustion. Still, she pushes on, driven by the memory of her mother's voice. "You're tougher than you think, Becca. Don't quit now." Mid-morning, a new threat emerges. The Poachers. At first, she hears only their voices, drifting across the wind, low and harsh. Then, dogs barking. Becca's blood runs cold. She pulls Ghost off the trail, ducking into a dense thicket, barely breathing. The men pass close enough for her to see their heavy boots, their guns slung over broad shoulders. One man points to a tuft of silver hair in the snow. "Mustang's close," he says. "We'll catch him by nightfall." Becca waits, her heart pounding until their voices fade. Then she leads Ghost deeper into the woods, stumbling over frozen logs, pushing through the undergrowth. She finds a hollow in the side of a hill, barely a shelter, but enough to hide them for a few precious hours. As dusk falls, snow begins again, masking their scent and covering their tracks. Becca lets herself hope, just a little, that maybe the blizzard will buy them time. That night, Becca dreams of her mother, her hands warm, her laughter clear. She wakes with tears freezing on her cheeks, but Ghost is pressed beside her, warm and alive. She buries her face in his mane and whispers, "I'm not giving up. Not now." Day 3 dawns bleak and blue. The world is silent, but for the crunch of snow underfoot and Ghost's labored breathing. Becca's food is nearly gone. Her water bottle is empty. She melts snow in a battered tin cup, sharing every sip. Ghost's pace slows. She fears he won't make it. But every time she thinks to stop, his eyes lock on hers, challenging her, daring her to try harder. Near midday, a rifle shot cracks the air, then another. Becca flinches, dropping to her knees, shielding Ghost with her body. In the distance, a figure moves between the trees, gun glinting. She grabs a handful of flares, lighting one and hurling it into the snow. It bursts, scarlet against the white, the hissing sound startling the poacher's dogs, who bolt in fear. "Go, go!" she urges Ghost, pushing him forward. Together they scramble over a fallen log, sliding into the gully below. Becca's knees buckle. She forces herself up, eyes burning, legs shaking, dragging Ghost through the snow. They hide in a thicket until the footsteps and voices fade. Only then does Becca let herself breathe, sobbing quietly into her scarf. When night comes, the cold is so deep it gnaws at her bones. Becca wraps herself and Ghost in blankets, curling together for warmth. The silence presses in. Becca thinks of the sanctuary, the promise of safety, green fields, other Mustangs running free. She clings to that vision, whispering it to Ghost as she strokes his trembling neck. "We're so close," she murmurs. "Maybe tomorrow." But her hope is thin, nearly spent. She knows there's one last stretch of mountain between them and the sanctuary, a place where both man and beast are at their most desperate. As Becca drifts into exhausted sleep, Ghost's breath warm on her cheek, she makes a promise to herself and to him. "I'll get you there, no matter what it takes." No lion, no poacher, no storm will stop them now. Not after how far they've come. The wind has changed. There's a sharpness in the air, a promise of something waiting beyond the next ridge. Becca feels it in her bones as she wakes that morning. Her muscles stiff, lips cracked, eyes gritty with exhaustion. Her dreams were filled with danger, flashes of claws, the crack of gunshots, the sound of Ghost screaming in the night. But as dawn creeps through the trees, pale and thin, she knows there's no turning back. Ghost is on his feet, trembling but determined. The sanctuary can't be more than a few miles now, maybe half a day if they keep moving. Becca packs up what's left. 2 flares, a handful of oats, the last strip of bandage. She presses her cheek to Ghost's warm shoulder and whispers, "We're almost there, buddy. I promise." The path climbs sharply, the snow now patchy in places, revealing stones and dead leaves. The mountain seems to sense their desperation, hurling gusts of wind and sudden bursts of sleet in their faces. Becca leans into the gale, shielding her eyes with one arm, guiding Ghost along the narrow, twisting trail. Every shadow feels menacing, every sound sharper. She keeps her ears tuned for any movement behind them, for the snap of a branch, the click of a rifle, the low growl of something hungry and patient. The silence breaks suddenly, shouting, a man's voice. Becca freezes, heart hammering. She pulls Ghost off the path, ducking behind a clump of stunted pines. Through the branches, she sees a man in a heavy coat, a rifle slung over his back, moving fast across the clearing below. One of the poachers. His breath comes in steamy bursts, his boots punching holes in the old snow. He's searching, scanning the ground, looking for tracks. Beside him, a big black dog sniffs eagerly, whining as it catches the scent. Becca's mouth goes dry. She can't outrun a dog, not with Ghost limping. She pulls out a flare, hands shaking, waits. The dog barks, ears pointed in their direction. The poacher lifts his rifle, turning toward the sound. Ghost tenses, nostrils flaring. For a split second, the world narrows to just the 3 of them, the hunter, the hunted, and the survivor standing between. "No!" Becca hisses, clutching Ghost's mane. She fires the flare. The red light arcs through the trees, hissing and spinning. The dog yelps, darting back. The poacher curses, lifting his gun, but the sudden flash and hiss of the flare sends both man and animal stumbling away, blinded and off balance. "Go, Ghost! Go now!" She shoves the Mustang forward, plunging back onto the trail. Ghost limps, gritting through the pain, hooves slipping on ice and rock. They scramble up the ridge, breathless, hearts pounding. Becca glances over her shoulder. She can see the poacher now, squinting into the glare, fumbling with his rifle, his dog howling beside him. Suddenly, a new sound. Low, guttural, close. The mountain lion. It comes out of nowhere, a blur of tawny muscle and teeth leaping from the rocks above. Ghost screams, rearing, his good leg buckling. The lion lands between them and the sanctuary trail, tail lashing, golden eyes fixed on its prey. The poacher shouts in surprise, stumbling back. For a second, nobody moves. Then chaos erupts. The lion snarls, hackles raised, stalking closer. Ghost flattens his ears, nostrils flaring. The poacher shouts, aiming his rifle torn between man and beast. Becca knows she has only one chance. She pulls her last flare, striking it hard against the rock. It bursts to life, brilliant and furious. She waves it overhead, shouting at the lion, at the poacher, at the mountain itself. "Get back! Get away from us!" The lion crouches, uncertain. Ghost, galvanized by fear and pain, suddenly charges, barreling past Becca in a desperate, wild burst of energy. The lion leaps aside, just missing his flank. The poacher fires, a wild shot that slams into a tree, snow showering down. In the chaos, Ghost veers toward the poacher. The dog yelps, running for cover. The poacher, caught off guard, stumbles, his rifle slipping from his hands. Ghost rears again, lashing out with his hooves, scattering the threat. The lion, stunned by the flare's light and Ghost's wild charge, backs off, tail twitching, eyes glowing in the gloom. Becca grabs Ghost's mane, hauling herself up, her body screaming in protest. Together, they stagger past the stunned poacher, past the confused lion, running, sliding, falling down the far side of the ridge. Behind them, the poacher curses, and the lion lets out one last furious roar. But they don't look back. The world narrows to just the two of them, Becca and Ghost, running for their lives. The trees thin, the ground levels, and suddenly, through the snow-misted air, Becca sees the distant fence line of the sanctuary. Wooden rails, bright red gates, a cluster of buildings glowing in the dawn light. We made it. Ghost, we made it. But she can barely stand. Her legs give out, and she collapses to her knees, still clutching the Mustang's tangled mane. Ghost, shuddering, leans against her, sides heaving. From the sanctuary, voices rise, shouts of alarm, the pounding of boots. A ranger in a bright orange coat sprints across the field, others close behind. "Help!" Becca manages, her voice hoarse. "We need help!" The rangers reach them just as Becca slumps into the snow, her vision blurring, her hands sticky with Ghost's blood and her own sweat. Strong arms catch her, gentle voices urging her to stay awake. She tries to hold on, tries to keep her eyes open as they lift Ghost, supporting his trembling legs, guiding him toward the safety of the big barn. Becca's last thought before the darkness claims her is of Ghost. Safe at last, for now, in a place where the wild things have a chance. And for the first time since that morning in the snow, she lets herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they both will find a way to heal. When Becca wakes, the world is gentler, muffled by warmth and the scent of clean sheets. At first, her mind claws for the woods, reaching for the cold, the danger, the constant alertness. But all she finds is softness. Sunlight pours through a window, painting gold across the walls. Someone's draped a heavy blanket over her, and a bandage circles her forearm. Her boots, muddy and battered, sit by the door. For a moment, she simply breathes, letting herself remember. The final, desperate run. Ghost's trembling body, the red flare arcing over the snow, strangers shouting, arms catching her as she fell. She tries to rise but winces, pain blooming in her ribs and shoulders. A woman with a kind face steps in, a steaming mug in hand. "You're awake." "Thank God," the woman says, voice low and soothing. "I'm Dr. Patel. You're safe at Rocky Ridge Sanctuary. You've been out for almost 2 days." Becca's first thought isn't for herself. "Where's Ghost? Is he—" "He's alive," Dr. Patel reassures her quickly. "He's in our barn, skittish, exhausted, but hanging on. You saved his life, you know." Tears sting Becca's eyes. The tension that's held her together for so long unspools all at once. Dr. Patel squeezes her shoulder and sets the tea on the nightstand. "Drink, rest, then I'll take you to see him." Every hour is an agony of waiting. When Becca is finally steady enough to walk, Dr. Patel leads her down a winding path toward the barn, the snowy fields bright and silent around them. The sanctuary is larger than Becca expected. Dozens of corrals, rows of hay bales, the sound of horses snorting and nickering. Staff bustle from one stall to another, moving with the calm assurance of people who know the rhythms of rescue work. Inside the barn, the air is thick with the smell of straw and liniment. Ghost stands in the largest stall, his coat patchy but gleaming, eyes bright but wary. His wounds have been cleaned and stitched. Thick bandages wind around his chest and legs. For a moment, he barely recognizes Becca. Then, as she leans against the gate, whispering his name, he steps forward, resting his head on her shoulder. "You made it. We made it." She closes her eyes, feeling the tremble in his breath, the way he leans his whole weight into her. Around them, the noises of the barn fade away, and it's just the two of them again. No blizzards, no mountain lions, no poachers, only the quiet heartbeat of survival. The days pass in a new kind of blur. Becca sleeps in a tiny room above the office, waking every morning to visit Ghost before the sun is fully up. She helps with chores, learning the routines of the sanctuary, feeding, mucking stalls, walking the perimeter fence. She watches as other horses, wild ones, lost ones, broken ones, heal in these fields, growing stronger each day. The staff treat her like one of their own, grateful for her help and in awe of the story she and Ghost carry with them. Becca is invited into staff meetings, where they talk about every animal under their care. She learns about their mission, giving wild Mustangs a chance to run free again, or, if freedom isn't possible, a safe home for the rest of their lives. She's offered a part-time job, and for the first time since her mother died, she feels the stirrings of belonging. There are still moments when she startles at a sudden noise or wakes sweating from dreams of claws and gunshots, but they come less often now. Ghost improves with each day. His wounds knit together. His step regains some of its old confidence. Becca walks him around the corral, talking to him softly, brushing his mane. She can see the wildness flickering in his eyes, even as he accepts the treats and care offered by the staff. But even as Ghost grows stronger, Becca feels a new weight settling in her chest, the knowledge that their time together is running out. The sanctuary's mission is to rehabilitate and release, not to keep wild creatures in captivity longer than necessary. Dr. Patel explains it gently one afternoon, as they watch Ghost graze on fresh hay. "He's doing well, Becca. In a week or two, he'll be ready for the herd again. He deserves to be wild. That's where he belongs." Becca nods, tears stinging her eyes. She knows it's true. Ghost is not a pet. He's a survivor, a piece of the wild she can never own. But letting go feels like tearing out another piece of herself. She spends long hours in the pasture, sitting on the fence watching Ghost as he meets the other Mustangs. He's cautious at first, wary of their energy, but soon he's running with them. Limping, yes, but with a spirit that can't be contained. Sometimes he glances back at her, eyes bright and searching, and she feels the ache of goodbye pressing in. The night before his release, Becca stands with Ghost under a sky thick with stars. She traces her fingers along his scars, feeling the story written in his skin. "You saved me too," she whispers. "I don't know if I can let you go, but you deserve to be free." Ghost bumps her chest with his nose, snorting softly. She laughs, tears slipping down her face, and presses her forehead to his. The next morning, the staff open the gate to the big wild pasture. Ghost hesitates, looking back at Becca one last time. She whispers, "Go on, Ghost. Be wild. Be free." He trots out, pausing only once to nuzzle her hand, then breaks into a run, limping but proud, joining the small herd as they gallop into the snowy hills. Becca watches until he vanishes into the trees, her heart breaking and mending all at once. The barn feels empty that night, but when Becca looks out over the moonlit pasture, she knows she did right by him. Letting go isn't losing. It's loving enough to set someone free. Spring comes late to the Rockies, but when it arrives, it does so in a rush. A melt of snow into clear streams, the first shoots of green grass pushing through the thawing earth, and wild horses kicking up their heels in the warming wind. Becca feels the seasons change most in her own heart. Where winter once pressed in, a cautious hope now grows, nurtured by each sunrise and every hoofbeat echoing across the hills. In the weeks after Ghost's release, Becca struggles with the emptiness left behind. Each morning, she wakes with the old ache, a need to check on him, to touch his nose, to hear the steady sound of his breath as he dozes in his stall. The barn, once filled with Ghost's energy, feels quiet, almost hollow. But outside, in the wide sanctuary fields, she sometimes catches a glimpse of his silver coat among the herd, a flash of wild beauty against the deepening green. She knows he's still there, free and strong, a part of the world again. At first, Becca doesn't know what to do with the story she carries. The pain, the fight, the hope. It feels private, almost too raw to share. But Dr. Patel, ever perceptive, gently suggests that Becca speak to some of the local school children who visit the sanctuary. At first, Becca resists, nerves prickling. She's always been more comfortable alone, or with animals not standing in front of a crowd. But the thought of telling Ghost's story, of letting it become something more than a private ache, begins to take root. On a bright afternoon, a group of fifth graders gathers in the hayloft, their eyes wide as Becca stands at the front, hands tucked in her jeans pockets. She looks out at their faces, eager, uncertain, open, and for a moment, she sees herself as a little girl years ago, clutching her mother's hand at a wildlife rescue event, her heart full of questions about the world. So she begins, her voice steady. "I want to tell you about a Mustang named Ghost, about how we found each other in the snow and what it means to give someone, or something, a second chance." As she speaks, the story comes alive. The storm, the fear, the mountain lion, the kindness and courage it took to keep going. She talks about failure, how there were moments when she thought about giving up, how she cried in the dark and doubted her own strength. She talks about empathy, about how Ghost's wild spirit helped her heal from old wounds, about how loving someone sometimes means letting them go. The children listen in rapt silence, some of them crying, some grinning with hope. By the end, even the adults in the back are wiping their eyes. When Becca finishes, a little boy raises his hand. "Was it scary?" he asks, voice small. Becca kneels down, meeting his gaze. "Yes," she says honestly. "It was terrifying. But sometimes, the right thing to do is also the hardest. And sometimes, you have to keep trying. Even when you're scared. Even when you're not sure you'll succeed." Another girl pipes up, "Why did you let Ghost go? Couldn't you keep him forever?" Becca smiles, her heart twisting. "I wanted to. But real love, the kind that lasts, means doing what's best for the other, not just for yourself. Ghost needed to be free. That's who he is." Word spreads about Becca's story. Soon, she's invited to speak at more schools, at local events, even on the radio. The first time she shares her experience with a reporter, her hands tremble, and her mouth goes dry. But as she finds her rhythm, the fear fades. Her voice becomes clear, steady, stronger with every telling. With each story, something inside her shifts. The grief that once weighed her down is now something else. A tool, a bridge, a way to reach others who feel alone in their struggles. Becca learns that healing isn't a straight line. It's a process of stumbling forward, falling down, and getting up again, one day at a time. Her work at the sanctuary grows too. Inspired by Ghost's journey and Becca's courage, more locals sign up to volunteer, bringing supplies, helping build new fences, and spreading the word about wild horse protection. Becca organizes community outreach days, showing families how to safely interact with horses, teaching kids about the importance of empathy and respect for all living things. One afternoon, she stands at the pasture's edge, watching a new group of rescues arrive. Their coats are shaggy, eyes wild, but there's a spark in them, a will to survive, to trust again. Becca feels the same spark in herself. She no longer feels like an outsider in her own life. The friends she's made at the sanctuary, Dr. Patel, the ranch hands, the volunteers, have become a kind of family. For the first time in years, Becca knows she's exactly where she belongs. Sometimes, on her evening walks, she spots Ghost at the top of a hill, mane tossing in the wind. He's a little slower than the others, but when she calls his name, he lifts his head, ears pricked, and just for a moment, she knows he remembers her. There's a peace in that, a gentle pride. In time, Becca's story ripples beyond the sanctuary. Articles are written. A documentary crew comes to film her and the horses, capturing the beauty of the wild, the tenacity of those who refuse to give up. Becca is interviewed about the meaning of second chances, about how compassion can reshape a community. She speaks from the heart. Ghost didn't just survive because of me. I survived because of him. He taught me that hope is always worth fighting for, that scars are proof you made it through, not signs of weakness. In helping Ghost reclaim his wildness, Becca found her own freedom. From fear, from loneliness, from the grief that once threatened to swallow her whole. She knows there will always be challenges, always new storms ahead. But she also knows she's not alone, and that by choosing compassion, by fighting for what matters, she's helping to build a world where every living creature has a chance to heal, to hope, and to run wild. Months have passed since that first desperate winter. In the sanctuary's valley, spring has given way to the golden promise of summer. wildflowers painting the fields in blues and yellows, the air sweet with grass, the sound of hooves like distant thunder rolling across the hills. Becca stands by the fence on a warm evening, the sun dipping low, painting everything in amber and rose. She watches the herd grazing far out in the tall grass, her eyes searching for one shape in particular, a silver coat gleaming among chestnuts and bays, head held proud. Ghost, the Mustang who changed everything. She finds him easily now. Even among the others, Ghost is a presence, a little leaner perhaps, and his scars still visible if you know where to look, but the limp has faded. His movements are easy and unhurried, the way only a horse who's survived the very worst can walk through the world. Sometimes the younger Mustangs challenge him, but he stands his ground, quiet and unyielding, more leader than outcast. Becca smiles to herself, arms folded over the top rail, her boots dusted with red clay. She's changed, too. The weight that pressed on her chest for so long has lifted. She moves with purpose, her mornings filled with work, helping new rescues off trailers, soothing frightened foals, teaching nervous volunteers how to gain a wild horse's trust. In the evenings, she writes in her journal or sits on the porch, watching the stars come out one by one. The pain of losing her mother still lingers, but it no longer defines her. Instead, it's become a part of her strength, a piece of the story she's built one day, one act of courage at a time. The community has changed with her. The stories she's shared, on the radio, at schools, through the documentary that aired on local television, have rippled out, sparking a new movement to protect wild Mustangs and the land they call home. The sanctuary is thriving, with new volunteers every week and donations that keep the fences mended and the hayloft full. Local ranchers who once saw wild horses as a nuisance now come for open house days, their kids trailing behind, eyes wide with wonder. Even Hank Wilson, gruff and stubborn, shows up sometimes to help mend a broken fence, muttering about damn horses, but never missing a chance to slip Ghost a carrot. Becca's proudest moments aren't her own, but the ones she witnesses every day. A filly born in the pasture, taking her first unsteady steps. A battered gelding learning to trust again after years of neglect. The laughter of children as they watch the herd thunder past, hooves churning up dreams. She sees herself in those moments, in every stubborn act of hope, every hand reaching out instead of pushing away. One bright afternoon, Dr. Patel finds her by the barn. The sanctuary is considering expanding, she says, maybe starting a program to pair veterans and trauma survivors with rescued Mustangs. Horses like Ghost, she says, heal in ways medicine can't touch. Would you help lead it, Becca? Becca doesn't hesitate. Yes, she says, her voice strong. I'd love to. That night, as the sun sinks and the shadows lengthen, Becca walks the fence line alone, letting the hush of twilight settle around her. She thinks about legacy, not the kind written in books, but the quiet, steady kind, built from choices no one else sees. She thinks about the pain she carried for so long, the loneliness that nearly broke her, the wild horse who saved her as much as she saved him. Near the crest of the highest hill, she spots Ghost standing apart from the herd, his silhouette black against the dying light. She climbs the hill, boots slipping in the grass, heart beating with something like gratitude. When she reaches him, Ghost turns, ears pricked, and for a moment, the world is as silent and perfect as the morning she first found him in the snow. "Hey, old friend," she says quietly, brushing her fingers down his scarred neck. Ghost breathes out, warm and steady. He nudges her gently, then turns to face the herd, head high. Becca stands beside him, shoulder to shoulder, both of them watching the sun slip beneath the mountains. She knows he won't come back to the fence tonight. His place is out there, in the wind, the grass, the wild. That's what real love means, she thinks. Not holding on, but fighting for someone else's freedom. She understands now, deep in her bones, what her mother tried to teach her. That kindness is a legacy, one that outlives storms and scars, one that grows with every act of courage and compassion. A few days later, the new program begins. Becca greets a small group of veterans, their faces cautious, eyes tired. She tells them Ghost's story and her own. She leads them into the pasture, teaching them to stand still, to let the horses come to them. She watches as the Mustangs, nervous at first, begin to approach, drawn to the quiet strength in the visitors' hearts. As the summer deepens, Becca sees the changes. Veterans who came in closed and wary begin to open up, finding a kind of peace in the steady company of the horses. The sanctuary becomes more than a safe haven for animals. It's a place for people to heal, too, a living testament to second chances. One evening, a reporter asks her what she hopes people will remember most about her story. Becca pauses, looking out at the hills where Ghost leads his small herd, their manes flying in the sunset wind. I hope they remember that freedom and compassion are worth fighting for, she says softly. That every act of kindness, no matter how small, ripples outward, changing lives, and that the wildness in all of us deserves respect, not fear. As night falls, Becca walks home through the whispering grass, her heart full and quiet. The world is still full of hungry lions and hard winters, but she's learned something precious, that it is the fierce, stubborn kindness of the human heart that gives us all a second chance, animal and person alike. Her story isn't just hers anymore. It's a legacy, one carried on the wind, running with the wild herd, passed from hand to hand, from one act of courage to the next. And as long as there are voices willing to tell it, hearts open to hope, and wild things left to save, the lesson will endure. Never give up. Cherish the wild. Let your compassion be your legacy.